So let's get to our next question, selective mutism in siblings. And I know there's a podcast episode that I did earlier on, and you can go to our search bar on the selectivemutismcenter.org website and search out siblings, and you should get a podcast episode. We'll also put that in the show notes. So here's a question. Our early elementary age child is being evaluated for SM. We highly believe she has SM. Our 2-year-old also shows similar silent behaviors. So we have a couple questions. One, can SM run in families? And how do we support our younger child? So I really think like each question could be just, a whole episode, which is why we do have an episode on siblings. So I do suggest for those interested in SM and how it affects siblings is to listen to that other episode. But the answer to the first question is yes, SM runs in families. And we do see that in genetic studies that there is a component genetically and biologically. So we do see that this anxiety can exist, specifically the social anxiety, the generalized anxiety. We do see it in families, but of course it can be learned as well. And it's interesting, Dr. Jenna, because for those listeners listening, you are my daughter. You are not the daughter that had SM, and you are very outgoing. Would you agree?
Yes, very much so.
You're very much like me, and you inherited that outgoing temperament. But interestingly enough, you were about 21 months younger than Sophie, who had SM and the more social anxiety, but you did mimic her. So when we would go out and about, similar to this, you were manifesting these behaviors. You wouldn't talk to the swim instructor, the gymnastics instructor. You mimicked your sister. You copied what she did. But yet innately in the comfort of your home, when you had some friends over, when you weren't always with your sister, you were very outgoing. So that wasn't your temperament. So interestingly enough, you can talk on this. You probably don't remember, do you?
I don't. I get parents asking me this sometimes, and Sophie was working through a lot of her SM and was treated around, I think it was when she moved really to kindergarten, which is where she really started to like blossom more. So I was still so young. I was only 3. So I don't fully remember, but I do remember copying her my whole life. So in that realm I still do, which she can definitely attest to. But I'm not surprised by that response is what I'm trying to say. But I do want to speak to, you mentioned how, SM does run in families. And sometimes I share with my families that, when we think about how SM, right, is a result of many contributing factors, I tell families that a lot of times, like you shared, it's really that social anxiety or that timid temperament aspect that is very much a genetic component. And when we've done our research, we have found that really like 80 to 90% of our families really fit within that structure. And so we see it. We see it with parents and their child or siblings and their child. And it's not even always necessarily the SM piece, because again, remember, that's a result of, but it's more that timid temperament piece that is a really big genetic component. So if you listening, think back to maybe your family structure and think about, yeah, I guess there is maybe some of that timidity that genetically has been like predispositioned. That is something that could run in families. The other interesting component is I've actually had some families share with me, and I've noticed this post-COVID, so I'm kind of shifting the question a little bit, but where it's not necessarily that they're noticing that their child is mimicking their sibling, but just with the fact that COVID, we're not necessarily getting a lot of this exposure and going out and about and doing things as much. A lot of my families have shared, hey, a lot of the SCAT strategies that we're learning and we're working through in treatment with you, we didn't even realize, but is really helping. So like sibling, right? So like, even though their sibling is in treatment, kind of working through things, the other sibling, also was noticing that like they were also benefiting from practicing some of these strategies, just because our strategies are very practical and really help in that aspect as well. So I find that very interesting too, that sometimes families do bring siblings into the treatment. Not necessarily, we don't want to ever burden a child, and we don't want a sibling to feel like that responsibility, but I do find that fascinating.
Yeah, and I would say we see that a lot in more being 2026 now, that I would say that families that have children in the 6-year-old, 7-year-old, 8-year-old, 9-year-old range were way more affected. So thank you for bringing that up, because for some families, 2 years, they were not engaging socially, and therefore they have more insecurities and they may be a bit behind. In this particular case, though, this child is only 2. So my guess is this is either mimicking her sibling. So here's the question I'd want to ask this parent that wrote this in. What is your 2-year-old like when your 2-year-old is not with their sibling in public? Like, let's say you take your sibling out, the 2-year-old. What is she or he like? And what is he or she like at home? Is she, well, I mean, I don't know if this is a boy or a girl. So let's just call it the 2-year-old. What is this 2-year-old like innately with their temperament? Because that's a really important thing. And as I said, I lived this. You were very outgoing. So with the friends that you did have, you were very outgoing. You're very outgoing at home. You were very outgoing in public when you weren't in a social situation actually with your sister. So it's interesting. So I would say taking that 2-year-old out separately sometimes, not always with their sibling. And the SCAT strategies are real strategies that work for a child that's shy or timid. Hand over, takeover, front line, preparing visuals, asking a choice question with the right answer second, playing some games like give my order with the visual. I mean, there's so many strategies we do, teaching teachers how to ask questions, when to ask questions, social comfort precedes communication. I can go on and on. You don't even have to have a label of SM to benefit from those strategies, because with families we talk to, they will say, wow, this makes so much sense. I don't take my daughter shopping. I'm always running quickly, or I order Instacart, and we don't go to stores. We have Amazon. And that's great. I don't go to stores. I order Amazon. I order Instacart. But I don't have a difficulty with social communication. But when I do walk into a big store, I'm like, wow, this is a big store. I haven't been here in a long, long time. So my point being is that we are a society now where we aren't going out and about as much, and post COVID, families aren't having the play dates as much. So I saw, and I'm sure you did, a huge drop in play dates and get-togethers. Families just don't have it as much. It's just so interesting. So exposures, 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 meeting those children where they are. Let's say the 2-year-old does have SM tendencies. We see SM in siblings a lot. We see twins. We see it. But as you mentioned, Dr. Jenna, it's the genetic kind of social anxiety, the family history of the generalized anxiety, the social anxiety. That's the stuff that you see more or less. But if a child doesn't have that, let's say they have other reasons for their SM, it isn't as familial, it isn't as genetic.
Yeah.
So I hope that was helpful to this family. There's a lot we talked about. Any other comments on that?
The only other thing I would add is, just for this family to hear, or another family that has siblings, is I just want to normalize that this is very common, and we do see many families that travel for our group intensive treatment community camp, where we have many siblings that will come to the camp, where one might be, a 12-year-old, and then their sibling who's 5 might also come because they're working on various skills. So not to say that all siblings follow in that same path, but if that is the case and you're noticing that, your other child does have some of these challenges, and like Dr. E said, maybe you're noticing it apart from their sibling, and maybe you're questioning. Now, I think you had shared the child was only 2, so I would definitely give it maybe a little bit more time, seeing how they engage socially, but it's
And to
definitely something that,
facilitate, right?
and
Don't wait,
facilitate.
facilitate. Like,
Mhm.
this child may not meet, look, the child's 2, doesn't maybe have even the language skills. But if you're seeing a tendency, practice hand over takeover, practice front line, practice game playing, at age appropriate. Like, the child's only 2. So
Exactly.
we just have to be realistic. If she's in preschool or he's in preschool, have a little play date at home over an area of interest.
Mhm.
Ways to build that social comfort, the confidence, the connection. That's so important.
Yeah.
So let's keep on moving, because again, we have 3 more questions to talk about.
Yeah.